Okay. Greetings, people. I guess there's a little kind of misunderstanding between the times area because here in Africa, in Yaoundé, we're still about 10 minutes to go. But I think most people are already complaining as if in their area is already an hour or a couple of minutes. What about you, Professor James Small?
It's
Normally it's 2 p.m. Eastern. Yes. What's your
it's
time?
it's like 2:53 p.m.
Oh, so there's some misunderstanding or confusion between the times. Yeah. So we are live on the Pan African Daily, and I want to welcome all of you that are watching us and signing in. A lot of people have been asking if it's proper that they will be calling in to ask questions directly to Professor. And concerning the topic that we're going to be talking about today, I say yes. Prof, is it okay with you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll be taking out in some questions. If you cannot call in directly because of the quality or where you are calling in because of internet restrictions, please make sure you follow us on the chat and you can drop your questions in the chat group. I would bring it live on the, on the platform for the global audience to follow out. We're streaming from multiple platforms, but I know a lot of them are not connected right now. So I would like to know where you're watching from. If you're watching from Zimbabwe, we should be connecting to Farmers of Thought with King Maponga Joshua, who actually had recommended each time Professor James Small is coming live, I must stream live on his platform. And we're also streaming on the Pan African Daily TV YouTube and Facebook channels, and definitely on Susan Tatah's page. Today, we welcome all of you, and we have a very critical topic, which is a very important topic. Today, as you've seen, we said the fact that African Americans or our diasporans, or Africans in the diasporans, are not physically present on the continent. They are more Pan-Africanic in nature, their love for Africa, their support for Africa, regardless of the leadership and the critics that they keep talking about, regardless of their dislocation or disengagement or physically being present, regardless of the 400, 500 years of this unity, regardless, Africans in the diaspora are more Pan-Africanists, or they are into Pan-Africanism, or more Afrocentric oriented, or have a knowledge-based facts and skills when it has to do with the continent of Africa. So Professor is right here to share this opinion with us. But apart from that, we also have other topics that we're coming up live today, for instance, like the situation in Haiti, where we'll be celebrating 265 birthday of Emperor Dessalines with Queen Mama Bello of Haiti. So there are a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today. But if you have some questions out of the topic, which you want to ask directly to Professor James Small, please drop it in the chat, or everything concerning the Pan-African Daily. Before I bring Professor live, I want to actually congratulate you and to break you this news that we are officially, Pan-African Daily TV is officially on TikTok. And I'll also be briefing you on the constraints that we'll be having on YouTube and Facebook. why our contents are restricted. Right now, we cannot have access to anything, regardless of our 100,000 subscribers. YouTube has deliberately not engaged us in getting the silver plate, and they consider most of our content, particularly the content from Professor James Small or King Maponga, as misleading, as going against their community standards. So, I mean, we have to be able to define what actually we want. So we are stepping on TikTok for two reasons. For the first reason, that TikTok only in the beginning created the possibility that you can only upload 30-second content, and that was really pro educative or pro friendly to Pan-African Daily TV content, which is actually rich. We are not even able to cover our topics in 2 hours, talk less of 30 seconds. So in the beginning, TikTok was actually for content creators or entertainment stuff. But right now, TikTok has actually, emancipated, like what I can say, and now we can create up to 10 minutes of content, which I think we're going to be representing the 10 most or the 100 most powerful conversations on Pan African Daily, and you can see everything is already being active on that platform. And of course, we have a lot of friendly tools that actually would not go to bring down or to shut down our voices. So our TikTok account is really going to be hot stuff. It's going to be, you would hear Professor PLO or Professor James Small or Baina or all our speakers on TikTok, things that they could never say because of all these, bias content creation on other platforms. TikTok is going to be the right place where we can speak as how much we want, how much truth it is out there to give on the platforms. So thank you so very much for being patient. Now I'll give the panel or the floor directly to Professor James Small. You're welcome on the show, Professor.
Thank you, Sister Susan. And we are used to the enemy trying to flip the script. They rob us, and then start screaming, robber, robber, robber. You know, we understand that Pan African Daily TV have been very effective in getting information out to our people about their current and historical conditions. The enemy is afraid of that. You could be sure that the youth of Niger have been listening to Pan African Daily TV. You can be sure that the youth of Burkina Faso have been listening to Pan African Daily TV. You can be sure that the youth of Ghana, Nigeria, who are telling their governments in ECOWAS to stand down, have been listening to Pan African Daily TV. And I've talked to many of the young people, elected officials, appointed officials in Ghana, and they've been vehement about telling their government, stand down, do not dare think of sending military into Burkina or into Niger. And a lot of this is because of the mission that Pan African Daily TV have been working for these years. You have reached your people when they have panicked to the point they're taking all of my content down. I'm one of the nicest guys out here. And there's hardly anything I can say that you can't research and see it as a fact. And me and Joshua and PLO, we're always giving people books from reputable scholars as sources to turn to. But what is happening, our young people are listening. I walk into a store and they say, oh, Pan African Daily TV. They don't know my name sometimes. They say, oh, there go the man from Pan African Daily TV. Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you. These are young people all over the place. Sometimes I'm a little nervous because I'm not used to that kind of attention. But to understand it, that the young people are listening, They want a better world. How dare the people of Europe, with all of their electricity, all of their technology, all of their comfort, all of their universities, all paid for by the raw materials of Africa or the free labor of African people. How dare they think of asking us to stand down off of their filthy channels? Yeah, don't be scared. That's what they are. They are what they are. After committing such horrific crimes against humanity, and is still committing crimes against humanity against our people. 500, 600 years of genocide against our people to steal our raw material, which we would have sold to them at a good price that would have been equitable for both parties. But the nature of the devil, they don't like to be called devils because in their holy book, they got a concept of a devil. But my teachers, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Malcolm X, said we are dealing with devils. According to their definition, that's the doers of evil. According to their definition of evil, evil is any act which is anti-nature. Now, does that describe what we're talking about? According to their definition. All we're trying to do is saying that we want to eat too, like everybody else. We want to wear nice African clothes, like this beautiful shirt that I'm wearing now, like everybody else. We want to have glasses to read when our eyes go bad, like everyone else. We would like a nice car, and now they got the electric car. We want to plug our cars in just like everybody else plug their cars in. We want electricity in our house for the refrigerator in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso. We want television in our house, okay, so that we can enjoy the world that's being produced by the natural resources of Africa. Is that a crime? And for us to talk about the criminals that block us from this, these platforms can tell us we are inappropriate. Would they dare tell the Jews of the world they're inappropriate for citing anti-Semitism wherever they find it? Would they dare tell the Jews of the world that they can't be on their channel because they talk about Hitler and their Holocaust? But we talk about our Holocaust and there's something wrong. We talk about our multiple Hitlers over centuries and there's something wrong. We talk about intergenerational genocide, the raping and plundering of our women's womb. Just take the Congo alone, and we're talking about millions in just the last couple of decades. And we're saying something inflammatory. We have to tell the Western world, we will cut you off from the source of your livelihood, which is the resources of Africa that you've been stealing. There's no turning back. France, send your army, and we'll send them home in bags. In the same way, when the British sent Gordon into the Sudan in 1886, Muhammad Ahmed, the Mahdi of Sudan, you sent, I think, 23,000, and you went back to Cairo with 3,000, and Gordon's head on a platter. Send your criminals, send your genocidal specialists. And the children of Africa will slaughter them in the dirt of Africa. We will bury them in our desert. You're an enemy of the people. You're an enemy of humanity. You're an enemy of God. And we know it. So all we're saying, we want to eat like everybody else. We want electricity like everyone else. We want a nice car. We want to send our children to university. We want to do all of the things the rest of the world in China, Vietnam, and Russia, and Australia, and New Zealand, and India, All of the things that the rest of the world want to do for their children and family, Africans want to do for theirs. And because some of us would dare talk about this, you would tell us about your freedom, and then you would block our speech. We will find a way to let you understand that that is more harmful to you than it is to us. Like our Muslim brother said, inshallah, we will show you. You know? And our Christian brother said, in Jesus' name, we will show you. Hmm? And for our Yoruba people, we will send Shango and Ogun to show you. Because we have been the human beings. We have not even slaughtered you after you've slaughtered us and our hands were free. We reached out and tried to practice brotherhood, and then you cut our hands off. You described the doer of those things as devils. So look in the mirror and see who you're talking about. We will be free in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the Americas, in Asia, wherever an African is in the world, we will unite around being African, being Africans. Wherever we find ourselves, we will find solidarity with one another. And in our solidarity, and in our unity, in our more than 3 billion in numbers, we will be as secretive as the sunlight. You can see it, but you can't hear it. And we will change this world we live in. No longer will the African, whether he's in Thailand, Japan, Nigeria, Accra, Paris, or London, no longer will we allow ourselves to be disunited and separated. Like the Yoruba said in their old language, Lukomi, you belong to me, African, and I belong to you. No matter what our differences are, no matter what our class contradictions are, no matter what our skin complexions are, Lukomi, you belong to me, and I belong to you. I will die for you, and I will expect you to die for me. Our great father of our revolution in Haiti, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, said, there's only one discussion, freedom or death. Only one, freedom or death. Period. Dr. Hilliard taught us that true African freedom is to be shackled to your African identity. True African freedom is to be shackled to your African identity. Period. We don't have to discuss, qualify, or anything to anybody. We are going to be free by whatever means necessary. Wherever we are in the world, we are one African. Wherever we are in the world, and one African cry, we cry. One African say, I hurt, we hurt. When Africa says, I can't see, we will grab your hand and be your sight and your vision. We will be one African. And we must practice that every day. Think that every day. One unity, one Pan-African people, one Pan-African people for eternity. And we don't care what the price. We're going to die anyway. Whether we die your slave or we die our freed person. I prefer dying my free person or fighting to be that free person, since I'm going to die anyway. And I dare you to stop me from giving my life to be free. Your numbers won't even allow you to stand in a long fight with me. You're less than 1/3 of the world population. Less than that. We outnumber you by the billions. And you're in our way. You're in the way of freedom. You're in the way of justice. You're in the way of unity. You're in the way of love. You're in the way of consideration. You're in the way of kindness. You're in the way of joy. And we are telling you, move out of our way. Move out of our way. This is not going to be Libya, Niger, Mali, Burkina, anything in Africa. You come. This is not Libya. NATO, this will not be Libya. If our cities burn, your cities will burn. By your own children's hands. Because your children know how unjust their mothers and fathers are. Your children in Europe and America, when they killed and choked our brother, your children stood with us in the millions, and they will stand with Africa again. I'm talking about the white children of the world. I respect you. You stood with George Floyd and the black race by the millions. And if they go to Niger, I know that the white youth of the world will stand with Africa by the millions. Because you no longer want this horrible life of hate and stealing and lying and oppressing that your elders have been doing from the West. So the South is now telling the West, get it right, or you will have to do without the resources of Africa. Get it right, or you will do without the resources of Africa. Because Africa is not going to unite. We are united. That's why you haven't sent any troops in, because you don't know what's going to happen next. Because we are united. And we're in every capital you have. We're in every bedroom you've got. We're in every country you have. Test us this time and see if we're going to be a docile, quiet African. We may be appearing to be docile and appear to be quiet, but we are Pan-African. We are Pan-African. We are going to unite around our ancestors' will. And our ancestors have willed us to be free. And we will not allow anyone to hold us in colonial slavery, imperialist slavery, or chattel slavery any longer. It'll be freedom or death. And we'll see who comes out at the top of that pyramid.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful,
Sister Susan, there's no way
for
we
that
can fight
wonderful.
and they not fight back. They will always fight us back, but that's the nature of war. But we must be willing to fight back. That's the
That's the fact.
victory of war.
We are able. We are able. Imagine what the Queen's Zinga, the Queen's Ya Asantewa. Imagine what the females of Dahomey, the military and the armies and the women, the Amazons. Imagine all that, what even the Celeste Empress did to the whole world. I mean, what is it again? What is it again? There's just one way. There's no two-way out of it, and there's no turning back. That's a fact. Whether you
We're
ban us
telling
from all
the white
platforms,
youth,
visible.
tell, yes, tell the white youth of the world, reach your hand out to the African youth and tell the fathers of the West, stand down. Your time is up. Your day is over. Stealing, marauding, murdering, genociding is not the way to do business in the world. Come with a nice business plan that you teach in your university. Come with a treaty that is equitable to both parties. Stand down, white West, because the South have decided never again, like the Jewish people of the world says, never again will we accept your imperialism, your colonialism, your neocolonialism, your slavery. Never again. And to the African collaborators who collaborate out of ignorance or for the sake of greed, Dessalines had a word for you. It went, "Peut-être, vous les cailles." Someone will remove your head and they will burn your dwellings. To tell the world that anyone who collaborates against justice, anyone who collaborates against fair play, anyone who collaborates against human development doesn't deserve to be among the humans. So Kupetet Bulekai, my young people, cry it out. Kupetet Bulekai to the collaborators, no matter who you are, wherever we find you. Just like if we find a thief on the streets in Africa, most times he won't make it to prison because the community will let them know stealing is not allowed among the people. And we must tell the collaborators who act as policemen or soldiers or politicians, you're a common thief on the street, and the people will stop you and meet justice to you as you deserve it. Because your stealing and your collaborating has left the masses starving, without medical care, without decent education, without joy in their life. You steal and you cause the most horrific crime against the people. And we want it stopped. And if you cannot stop yourself, then someone has to stop you. We need to form the Poro societies again. We need to form those of the secret society of the people of Sierra Leone and Liberia and other areas of the Mendi people, of which I'm a part. I am a Mendi. We must form the Osafo companies again. Those are the paramilitary youth that protect the villages and the towns of Africa. And we must form the same kind of societies all over Africa. And those who commit crimes against our people, whether they look like us or not, are to go to the justice that the ancestors prescribed, whatever that be. There is no freedom without the willingness to die. It's freedom or death. If you want freedom, you must be willing to die. And true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your African identity. Not France's identity. Je suis français. No. You have to be shackled to l'ukomi. You belong to me. I belong to you. Your African identity. I know you say, oh, Small, you sound like you're a preacher. You're just saying these things over and over again. That's fine. One of our sisters, Zora Neale Hurston, said, we talk about the Africa we want to see. Well, Zora Neale said, to be there in that Africa you want to see, you must go there. But to go there, to that African you want to see, you must know there. You must study our history, study our culture, study your ancestors, be instructed and informed by your ancestors' pains, be instructed and informed by your ancestors' joys, be instructed and informed by your ancestors' dreams, and then bring their dreams to light for them. Because surely your ancestors are you. Every gene, every DNA in your ancestors' body live in you. Their dream might have been taken away, but now you have a new opportunity to fulfill that dream of the ancestors, that dream of being free, that dream of being in charge of their own natural resources, that dream of saying the gold belongs to us, the cobalt belongs to us, the coltan belongs to us, the uranium belongs to us, the diamond belongs to us, and we share it with whom we choose to share it with, who wants to have an equal, equitable arrangement of trade with us, so that we can build for our people food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security, like all other peoples in the world do for their people. And anybody who thinks that is asking too much, you're an enemy of humanity. And this Black humanity will not recognize you. You know? So young people of Africa, young people of Europe, young people of Asia, stand with the nations of Africa that want to be free. Stand with the nations of Africa that want to finally throw off colonialism. Stand with the nations of Africa that have the resources to clothe themselves, give them food, give themselves medical care, but they don't have it. They look like beggars at somebody's door because someone else is stealing the natural resources in a relationship with Black collaborators. And we must address both of them. The collaborators, you love Europe so much, get on a plane and go there and never come back to Africa anymore. We do not want you. We do not want to see you. If you think that way of life of being a robber, a thief, a genocider, an imperialist, a colonialist, an enslaver, and the wealth that derives from it is a better life than freedom, then go with them. Because we've taken Africa back. That's a fact. We have taken Africa back. And that is truly a fact. So come. It may be a short battle, it may be a long battle, but it is going to be a battle and we're going to win. So if you want to sit in Europe and cry over your children, bring your technology, your drones, your poison, and all the things you brought in Afghanistan and Iraq, and you will learn Africa is not Afghanistan or Iraq. Because our people will not stand down and run. You've pushed us in the corner. We have no place to run to now, except to fight back. And I beg my babies. I'm a 78-year-old man. The youth of Africa, which is the majority of our population, you're my babies. I beg my babies. Cry freedom or death. Pan-Africanism or perish. Freedom or death. Pan-Africanism or perish. We will unite and we will be one Africa. And we will share our wealth with the world equitably if they want to share our wealth justly. Let us have your technology that you earned from stealing from me, and we will sell you our resources so you can continue living like you are. But we're not going to any longer let you take it for nothing. We want food, we want clothing, we want shelter, we want safety, we want security for our people. That's what you said you want for yours. So how do you get on a plane, come across a huge ocean or a huge desert and a whole sea with your armies to tell me how to breathe my air, to tell me what food to eat, to tell me whether I can eat or not without your permission? It is freedom or death, Pan-Africanism or perish, unity into one Africa. And anyone that gets in our way is kupetet ulekai. We will try to take your head and we will burn your dwellings, whether it's a tent, a truck, or a house. Celine said freedom or
Professor
death.
James.
Yes, ma'am. I know that's a little hot. So we'll cool a little bit.
Sure, it's hard. But they had that's true, it's hard, but what is more hard than seeing people, half of the population, fighting to survive? What is more hard than seeing people without food? What is more hard than the inability to know what is going to happen with your life tomorrow? What is more hard than people who just die of things that people don't even die this day because they cannot afford to pay their medical bills or even have a means? What is more hard than being alive and being hopeless? What is more hard, right? So the words that we are speaking are words of motivation, and I think the young people have it already. They got it. If you look at
They
those on the
got it.
street in this,
Africa is going to be free.
they
Africa
have
is
it,
free
and
already.
absolute, absolute. We had a challenge that we are bringing. This challenge is actually going in the direction of putting us into a self development and self critical critics by ourselves. And we threw out a questionnaire out there. Are you African because you're born on the continent? That's how we came to it. Or you're African because African is in you. And most of the answers were going to the fact that African in the diaspora, or African descendants, we're talking about our enslaved brothers and sisters in the diaspora, are more Pan-African than the continental Africans. How would you share this opinion? It was very interesting to see that even most of those that were actually voting or taking the survey were Africans on the continent who were saying they don't know their history because their education was, they have a miseducational system. They are still worshiping deities that don't belong to their ancestors. They are more European, even in their way of thinking, in their way of dressing, more than the African Americans that have maybe born and never been on the continent. They are more conscious about the African history. They are more conscious of searching for where they are. But one of the best answers was the fact that even African Americans or Africans in the diaspora actually don't care which African country they're relocating to. They just want to go home to motherland. So those were the basics that they say African descendants are more Pan-African than Africans on the continent. I want to hear you.
Yes, and we want to approach that with the right spirit. That is a true statement, but the circumstances that each of us had to live makes the statement true. In North America or in the Caribbean or in Central South America, where the diaspora is spread in the largest number, we knew we had been taken away from home. And from our very inception, almost 500 years ago, of being stolen from home, we yearned to go back home. And as the system in the West struggled to take away our minds, our culture, our language, and our identity, we found ways to struggle to retain them. And it is in that struggle to retain our African essence that the brothers and sisters coming up out of the Caribbean and then North America move forward with the concept of Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism simply means that Africans are all united around being Africans, around things economic, political, and cultural, around things social and things spiritual. And so we developed movements in the 1800s, 1900s, 20th century around the concept of Pan-Africanism. At home on the continent, while we in the Americas and in Central South America, thanks to the revolution in Haiti, led by our great ancestor and our great general and our great emperor, Dessalines, that shattered and shook the slavery system in the diaspora in such a way that slavery began to end year after year after year in different countries throughout the diaspora. Within 65 years after Dessalines and Toussaint and Defele and Cecilia Fatima and all of the great Toyas of Haiti struck their force for freedom, 65 years later, slavery in the entire Americas had been abolished. Haiti did that. The Africans of Haiti did that. And then our brothers and sisters at home, in the mother's and father's house, was left in slavery under the title of colonialism and military domination. And so after 1885 in the Berlin Conference, 84 through 85, a re-invasion of the African continent. While we in North America were being freed from chattel slavery, we in Brazil, we in Argentina, Venezuela, Haiti, Jamaica, while we were being freed, every army of Europe then turned their attention to Africa and invaded north, east, south, and west with the armies of Europe, with France from the west and the northwest, with Britain from the west and the east, with Germany from the south and the east, with Holland from the south, with Belgium from the west central. They sent their filthy armies of genocide, murdering millions of our people after 1885 because they lost the slavery institution in the Western Hemisphere thanks to the efforts of Haiti and Dessalines. They lost it within 65 years, all gone. And they then decide, let's invade the motherland and take full control and enslave them. So until the Sudan in 1861 and Ghana in 1863, and then Cameroon, and you were asking about the women of Cameroon. It was the market women of Cameroon, and I got to get you the information that after the First World War, that triggered the rebellions against colonialism, and then that was followed by the women of Nigeria and then Ghana, which led to Nkrumah coming to power in Ghana. And we watched the domino effect through the 60s and 70s of us trying to throw off the slavery of colonialism, then the slavery of neocolonialism. But we haven't been able to do it. We've done it partially. But their curricula is still taught in the school, and our histories are still despised. Their religion is still practiced by us, while the religion of our ancestors are demeaned and vilified. Their dance and their music is called classical, while ours is called rudimentary. And yet ours have been in existence for thousands and thousands of years longer and have been perfected in all of its movements. So yes, the Pan-Africanism in the consciousness and the behavior of those of us in the West makes sense because of where we are in the battle to throw off European slavery, colonialism, and imperialism. So we are a few steps ahead in that battle. In the continent, we're just coming out of slavery. Where in the United States, we've been out for more than 100 years. In some form, we're still in, but the bulk of it we are out of. But in the continent, in Cameroon, you're still in slavery in Cameroon. Yes, you got black skins in political office, but it's meaningless. England and France run the Cameroon and the Americans. The Cameroon is their slave colony. You live there. That's the truth. We're not free in our own land. That's slavery. The people in Niger said, how come I walk down my street and I have to carry a lantern with oil and you can hit a switch and light your streets in Paris? But it's my uranium that allows you to do that. How come you have beautiful hospitals with well-trained doctors and nurses, but I die in my living room because I have no hospitals to go to? That's what we're talking about. We're talking about basics, common sense. Yes, the brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa, for the most part, percentage-wise, is not as advanced in the concept of Pan-Africanism or in the organized structural Pan-African structuring as those of us in the Western Hemisphere. But it is our circumstances that have put us in the lead on it. And so now we have the obligation. We in the West have the obligation to make sure that we help to speed up the African education process on the continent to expose imperialism, expose colonialism, and show the damage that they've done to our psyche, our character, and our personality, our culture, and our basic family structure, so that we can again begin to rebirth African consciousness in ourselves and restore African integrity to the communities we live in and the societies we build. And that's when we will see Pan-Africanism at work. and full force. So there is a disparity, yes, but not because one is smarter than or better than or more conscious than. It is because the historical battle of Haiti, and it is so apropos that you're doing this on the day of the birth of the emperor. Had Haiti not happened, Venezuela would not have happened. Argentina would not have happened. Brazil would not have happened in terms of the freedom of African peoples. The ending of slavery in North America and the United States would not have happened, not had it been for Haiti. So the European says if we can't enslave them in the Western Hemisphere anymore, how do we get their slave labor and resources in our hands? Then they call the Berlin Conference. 20 years after slavery was overthrown in the United States. And the United States may not have had an army at the table, but they had advisors and investors at the table in Berlin. And they committed the greatest genocide in the history of the world against the people of Africa. And nobody even called it a war. No one even called it a war. Every army of Europe invaded every square inch of Africa, murdering millions of people to steal their wealth, and no one called it a war. Because those who've written the books are the criminals who committed the crime. So we have to rewrite the books so that the youth of Africa can see what imperialism is and what it has done, what slavery is on the continent of Africa and what it has done, what colonialism is. And don't talk about colonialism like it's not slavery. Colonialism is one of the worst forms of slavery. Neo-colonialism is an even worse form of slavery. Look at South Africa and watch neo-colonialism at work. Look at most of the British former colonies in Africa and watch neo-colonialism at work. Go to any university in Africa, any high school, any middle school in Africa, and see if you can learn anything about the African peoples whose children and grandchildren is in those schools. But yet they're learning about the European people. They're getting a European worldview. They're getting a European perspective on reality. They're getting a European value system on ethics and morals, if they can have any such thing. And anytime Africa comes up in the conversation of academia, in most of the schools in Africa, it comes up as a negative, to be despised, discredited, and dismissed. We all know it. We've all seen it. Some of us have been to school. You went to the school. Or they teach you reading, writing, and arithmetic because they need you to be a good working slave. But they make sure you don't know your identity. You do not respect your ancestry. You do not respect your history or know your history. You do not retain your culture. You do not have your spiritual values. They give you their concept of God and they bury your concept in the dirt and urinate on it and encourage you to urinate on it. And we do. And our hearts ache.
Professor, could you just explain in very simple terms, I mean, short and practical, because you do it very perfectly. I don't know any other person that could actually break it down like that. The difference between slavery, colonization, imperialism, neo-colonization, and globalization. These are some kind of terms that people hear on daily basis, particularly Africans, but they actually could not, like you said, neo-colonialism is another form of slavery or colonization or colonialism. Is it possible that you just simply explain in some keywords? Thank you.
Yes. First, we must accept that all of them are methodologies of enslaving a people. Chattel slavery is where they just viciously murder us, put us in chains and shackles, and force us threat of death to work for their lazy behinds. You see, they wanted our minds and our bodies. We built London. We built Paris. We built New York. We built Washington, D.C. The African built all these places with our bodies and our minds. And in that form of chattel slavery, where the physical instrument of death was constantly with us for hundreds of years, when we broke those chains, they moved into a new form of slavery called colonialism. But they did the same thing. They came to Africa with their armies. They murdered our kings. They murdered our queens. They sacked our temples and put our artifacts in their museums. They burnt our villages. And they now tell us, you work for us, but we won't put any chains on you. We just won't kill you if you work for us. That's all colonial. That's the only difference. The main difference between chattel slavery and the colonial and what we call colonialism is one form of slavery. You were in chains and worked to death. In the other form of slavery, they took away the chains, but they had their armies, the French Foreign Legions, the British armies, the German armies, occupying your center, controlling all of the fundamental means of production of society. And for you to survive, you had to work. Let me show you an instance in the British areas, Ghana, Nigeria, Zimbabwe. A child would go to school in the morning, and certain of the children would be given blocks of wood to carry. And if they hear another child speak in the indigenous language, they were to give that block of wood to that child. At the end of the day, the children caught holding the block of wood would be whipped. Do you hear me? These are animals. They had the children enforce that rule of murdering the indigenous language in their psyche by having them carry this block of wood, which they would then give to another one of their friends if they heard them speaking the local language. So at the end of the day, the headmasters would whip those children severely. And that went on every day. Or another thing, a father is working hard on the farms and the mother to produce the cocoa that creates the chocolate in Switzerland, to make the beautiful Swiss chocolate and Hershey chocolate bar in America that don't have a cocoa plant nowhere near them. But the father's child cannot go to school unless he changes his name from Kwame to John. If you're willing to change your name to John Johnson instead of Kwame Mbansa, then you can go to school. But if you insist on remaining Kwame Mbansa, your ancestors' lineage, then you were not allowed in school. You go back in the field and you work. These are some of the tools of colonialism that was at play every day, as well as the gun being pointed on you every day, as well as the means of production being guarded by the armies of the enemy, meaning the water, the electricity, the mine, whatever supplies that supplied that society. And you had no access to them except as beggars. And if you got paid at all, it was just enough to get you by till the next day or the next week. The best book, Things Fall Apart, by Chinua Achebe. If you really want to get an understanding of colonialism, read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And listen to Okonkwo as the main character of the book. And I haven't read this book in 40 years, but it's still in my brain. And you will get a good sense of how colonialism works. And then get Kwame Nkrumah's book, It's called neocolonialism. They say, oh, we'll give you independence. You have a flag. And we'll give you an anthem. You now have an anthem. But we will control the natural resources in the land. We will control the economics of your country. Right? But we will even determine the uniform of your policemen. We will determine the uniforms of your army, and they will be patterned after those of the imperialists and colonizers. And at the end of the day, we will determine what type of government you will have. They'll call it parliamentarian democracy. But you cannot have an African government or an African democracy based on communal, collective, cooperative functioning. You must have a predatory government based on winner take all. They may seem like simple things. And people say, oh, well, all you have to do is get a good education. Look around you and tell me how well that's working. You know, look around and tell me how well that's working for the masses of our people. Yeah, one or two of us, we're doing really well, as long as we don't come and try to make that doing well work for our people. We're doing really well as long as we stay with the enemy and enjoy ourselves. And so, oh, look at how poor they are. Oh, we have to send a ship over to give them medical care for free. Oh, they can't even build a decent roadway. We have to build their roadway for them. So we'll go and build in America. We put 2 foot of asphalt, but in Ghana, we do 3 inches of asphalt. And so the road just falls apart. We have to be clear. The armies of Europe invaded Africa and they occupied Africa. They murdered off the leaders and the resistance. It isn't that we didn't resist colonialism. One of the best is to look at the Sudan, Muhammad Ahmed, to look at the Zulu Wars, Bambada, Sechiweya, to look at the wars in Zimbabwe, led by our women priestess, to look at the wars led by the Shona leadership. Study our history. They had the audacity to even write about our resistance. Look at the resistance in the Congo. Look at the resistance in Angola. Look at the resistance in Tanzania. Look at the Mau Mau in Kenya. Look at Dedan Kimathi, who they make a villain. Look at Jomo Kenyatta. We had so much beautiful heroes and heroines that fought against the terrorism and the slavery of colonialism. Just study their lives and it will invigorate you to resist till death the tyranny of neocolonialism. How dare you walk in my house like you own it with no respect for me, my elders, or my ancestors while you're in my house. Ngugi, yes, Ngugi is enormous. I love his work. And he will tell us about this colonialism. And there's so many others that we can study.
Mm-hmm.
You know, history erases the mystery. I always remember that term. Your history will erase the enemy's mystery. So you can see clearly how to restore the integrity of African ethics, moral principles, and polity. And we're doing it. It's happening. The thing in Burkina Faso isn't a fluke of some military men. Those were not coup d'etats by the military. A coup d'etat is when your enemy take over your country. These are the people of the country using the weapons of the enemy to take the country back from the enemies. These are acts of revolution that we see in Mali, in Burkina, in Niger. You know? And let's not be fooled by their terminologies. And we know the crisis with the water in Haiti. But we have water in Haiti. Yes, the Dominican Republic, which is not owned by the people of the people of the Dominican Republic is mostly African people too, but they're lost and ignorant of their own history and their own heritage and background. The Dominican Republic is run by the United States of America and Israel. You hear what I'm saying? There was a black man named Pina Gomez who had the Dominican Revolutionary Party. In 1968, he won to be the president of the Dominican Republic. But because his skin was black and an African American stepped in and would not let him take office. So they put Juan Bosch and Balaguer, the whites, in. One term of Juan Bosch, the next year Balaguer, and they played musical chairs for decades. Pina Gomez would finally win a seat in the Congress of the Dominican when he was an old man. I'm blessed that I did work with the Dominican the Revolutionary Party in the 1960s, and I got to meet Pina Gomez. Black skin, man, black, like night, beautiful African man. So what the Dominicans are doing, these are the Americans. They want to keep Haiti from being free because Haiti have oil, Haiti have diamond, Haiti have gold, Haiti have cobalt, Haiti have iridium, the metal they need to go into outer space. And they want to keep stealing it. If they just drilled for the oil in Haiti, every Haitian would be a wealthy person. But the greed of the West and the need to dominate and punish Haiti, because Haiti destroyed the slavery system in the Western Hemisphere. And that's why they had the Berlin Conference. The Berlin Conference was a direct response to the result of the Haitian Revolution. Study the history. You'll take away the mystery and you'll see the straight line. Study the great Zulu Wars and see how the Zulu people resisted over decade over decade. It was only the European gun technology that defeated us in Zululand. Study the Mau Mau's. Study Muhammad Ahmed, the Mahdi of Sudan. Study Abdallah of Sudan. Study the great King Menelik of Ethiopia. We won many of the battles, but we never stopped fighting. We resisted. Africans have always believed in resistance, rebellion, and death. And we are feeling that now. Our young people, I'm so proud of you. You are going to give us Africa back. I may not live to see, but my spirit will be in one of my grandchildren watching it all as they grow up. Free the land, free the land, free the African land, freedom or death. Pan-Africanism or perish, free the land. Pan-Africanism or perish. Let those be your mantra.
Oh, thank you very much, Professor. It's always a pleasure to have you here. We are having the 265 or 65th birthday anniversary of Emperor Descendants, and we had Professor Baena Bello here on the show. And I also noticed that you were on a radio show today. I don't know whether it was in New York.
Harry Radio.
I've heard.
Sister Kabu. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was wonderful. Just remembering the emperor, remembering he was born into slavery, and remember that he rose even as a foreman among the slaves, and remembering that an African man who had freed himself, named Dessalines, bought him out of slavery from the white man and gave him his freedom. Remembering that he joined the Spanish army with two sons to fight against the French. And only when the French abolished slavery did he come back into Haiti with two sons and began to fight to keep them from reinstilling slavery in the country. And when Leclerc, the great general, was sent from France to destroy the freedom fight, and they captured our great Toussaint, the irritated genie, that's what he's called in literature, Dessalines. He's the irritated genie The Irritated Genie. There's a good book on it by Dr. Jacob Carruthers called The Irritated Genie, a good analysis on the Haitian Revolution. The irritated genie took over, and he practiced scorch earth. Wherever he found the enemy, he took their head, he burned their house. No apologies. He freed Haiti. And then he went and helped free much of the African enslaved people by sending army and money in Central and South America. And he inspired the freedom fight in North America. And eventually, within 65 years, the blow that Dessalines struck in creating the first free Black republic on the planet Earth, after slavery had been instituted against us, the entire slavery system in the Western Hemisphere crumbled because of the people, the African people of Haiti, because of an old lady named Toya who taught Dessalines to be a soldier, because Mr. Dessalines, who after Dessalines became emperor, the Black man that had brought him from freedom, Dessalines brought him into his home. Before the collaborators murdered him and destroyed our way of life of voodoo. Voodoo Daha, the essence of God in the earth. Voodoo Godsi, the essence of God in the human. To understand the sacred science of Africa's worldview on cosmology and ecology, and to practice that in your daily life. That was the philosophy of Dessalines, which is a simple, basic, indigenous philosophy of Africa, by whatever name. We want it back. I live by it. I am it. But we want it back for all of us. We don't need a spook God. We don't need a mythical God that frightens you with death. We need to turn our eyes inward and have a conversation with the God within us that look like our ancestors, that will instruct us on what to do next. The secret to life, Malcolm X taught us, is to have no fear. Pan-Africanism or perish is a term Dr. Clark gave us. Freedom or death, Dessalines gave us. So he said, freedom or death, the secret to life is to have no fear, Pan-Africanism or perish. And we do not intend to perish. And do they think, is this not the truth that I'm saying? Is there anything inappropriate about what I'm saying? I'm only talking about freedom of my people, restoration of my ancestral integrity, restoration of my history, gaining control over our natural resources so that we can share it to the world in the way we wish to. What is wrong about that some network would want to take us down? But maybe we should take some questions, Susan, and kind of see. I have Babalu Aye with me tonight, and I have Ishu Legba. So let's see if does anyone have questions they want us to entertain.
If you have a question, and like I said, there were some on the list already. I think they wanted to actually ask it directly, but I think they are not appearing on the chat. Those were mainly the youth of Pan-African Daily in the different countries. When they heard you were coming up, they were like, we have a lot of questions that we've been piling up. So I can see their leader here in the chat. I guess he's not able to connect for the moment. But of course, the interactions
Let's go back over our
that
main.
we've been having in the chat group, if you could see most of them when you mention particular issue between.
Let's go over our main questions. Sylvester Williams who launched what we know as the Pan-African movement
Um,
at the turn of the century.
yes.
And then W.B. Du Bois from the United States, who would take it to the next step. And then we would watch it get implemented in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Kenyatta, Ezekwe, Nkrumah, and others. That the formulation of the OAU was a statement on Pan-Africanism. It did not reach the goals that Nkrumah wanted to reach, but that was the continental African consciousness formulating Pan-Africanism as a working methodology in establishing new African states and breaking the bonds and chains of colonial slavery. So Pan-Africanism had been functional in the continent of Africa from the beginning of the terminology. But because we're just breaking away, I mean, we're just understanding that neocolonialism was not freedom. We're just understanding that those who committed the genocide against us was controlling our education, controlling our socialization. Socialization is how a community, through their children, gets their values, interests, and principles. So when the enemy is controlling your socialization process, controlling your educational process, controlling your media process, then you can't see your reality. You see the reality that he's trained you to see. So many of us don't even know we are enslaved in Africa. Many of us in Africa don't even realize that our culture have been taken away from us. Many of us don't realize that when we say we juju and fetish and voodoo, that we're disrespecting the very essence of the African sacred spiritual science of our ancestors. Many of us don't understand when we push Christianity and Islam, we do it at the murder, the utter murder of an indigenous African religious system that's older than those two systems combined. And that the Abrahamic religious traditions is born out of a fragment of an African spiritual tradition. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are mere fragments from the periphery of the African sacred science system. And that's why those who practice it are some of the biggest criminals in the world, because it does not acculturate you into a spiritual, ethical, moral higher being. It is based on hypocrisy from its inception, on lies and deceptions. So be clear. Our mothers and our fathers loved us more than our enslavers. So why is our enslavers telling us how to look at our mothers and our fathers? And we accepting their description. But studying history, reading the literature of your people will help you break the chains of colonial slavery, neo-colonial slavery, and give you the tools to fight imperialism, the military, economic, political dominance of your homeland by a foreign enemy. So come up with some questions. Brother Smalls, thank you, and so many others like you for helping me restore my African mind. And Queen Empress, Dr. Susan Tatah, thank you for your program. Learning so much love and respect from TNT. I know TNT must be my second homeland, Trinidad and Tobago. You know, my shrine is in Chaguanas, an enterprise village. The Kenny Cyrus Elay Jube. I was first trained in the depth of our indigenous tradition by shrines that was brought from Africa, actually brought from Haiti via Grenada and Carriacou to Trinidad. So I got a good understanding. So, oh, Elder Small, I miss you so much. So glad to see you here today. Dixon, I missed you too. Um, we've all had to go through a lot, and the enemy had put so much pressure on Sister Susan and put so much pressure on Pan African Daily TV, pushing us off of their platforms, restricting what we can say. But we will never give up. We will never give up. We will always find a way to teach, always find a way to show the young people the light. He said, Professor Small, what 3 books would you recommend for the young person who would like to know more about his or her history? Robin Walker's book, When We Rule, would be my first book. Robin lives in the UK. Robin Walker's book, When We Rule. Sheikh Anta Diop book, Cultural Unity of Africa. And Dr. Wade Noble's book, which is called The Island of Meme. It is an analysis of the damage that colonialism and enslavement, but particularly colonialism, do to the mind of the Africans and how to go about repairing it. Those 3 books, The Island of Meme by Dr. Nobles, Check on the Diop from Senegal, The Cultural Unity of Black Africa, and Robin Walker, When We Ruled. If I had to give you 3, I could think of 100, but those 3, I think, will be a foundational books. And then you use the bibliography, which you will find in those books. And I think you would be in a good place. The issue of Christianity and Islam should be addressed by our scholars. In my opinion, African and Black people should quit Christianity and Islam and embrace African spirituality. I agree with you 100%. I was born into the Christian community. My grandfather was a minister. I left that community at 17 and I went into the Islamic community because of Malcolm X. By 21, I was an imam of the Muslim Mosque Inc., voted in, selected by the community, went to Mecca by 1974 and became Al Hajj Amin Shahid. And there in Saudi Arabia, I had already met African indigenous religion because my grandmother was an indigenous priestess. We call them root ladies down in South Carolina where I grew up. But I was reintroduced by the spirits of Africa while I was in Saudi Arabia. And I never went back to preach in the mosque ever again because I found Africa. And Africa saved my life. I found my mother. I found my father. And I would go to Africa thanks to Dr. Leonard Jeffries, who took me over and over in the early days, my great teacher. And I met Nana Afuasa, who was the priestess of the Ashanti Nation at the time, and she became my mother. I met a man named Bafo Okotu, who was the linguist to Asantehene, a Pokawari, and he became my teacher. I met my father and my Omenhen, Nanakua Kusapam, of the Agogo stool in the Agogo kingdom. I serve as one of his sub-chiefs, as Nanakopi Impansa II. And so I'm home in me. And I've gone to the shrine of the Yorubas. And there I'm Obenjoko Adebayo, the king who have returned to reclaim his crown. And I've studied that tradition well and wear it well. I try every day to learn our history and understand our way. The Archon system of the 3 spirits of the universe. Study them. Study the language of the Archon people. The history is in the language. The culture is in the language. The mystery system is in the language. Study the Yoruba. Study the Swahili. Study the Shona. Study the Zulu. The spiritual history is in the language of our people. How do we keep the endurance to see this? Oh, we should put that back up. I'd like to read it again. the last question I didn't get to read. How do we see the endurance to see this to the end? It seems like colonizers always find a way to remain in control, even if they have to use us to do so. How do we look at Black leaders in the West? Both at home and in the West, we have collaborators. Anyone who isn't trying to restore the integrity of African history and culture, anyone who isn't working to free African peoples to be in charge of their own destiny is an enemy of the people, and we should treat them as such. The colonizers will not win again. It didn't take us 2 days to get here. It's been about 1,000 years of warfare, really 2,000 years of warfare, but intensified the last 5.5 centuries. But we're going to get back at a much quicker time than they put us in this position. And the one thing we must realize, we didn't lose as much as we thought we lost. They've simply blinded us in terms of the direction in which we look. We have to seek the truth from our people. We have to go and crawl into the village and go into the hut and sit on the floor and fall on your knees and your face and ask the priests and the elders and the teachers to please teach you. If you come in sincerity, they'll know. You may say, oh, he's got some cowrie shells. There's nothing to the CD. You just throw some shells on the ground. What does that mean to me? Well, I can take 16 cowries, and it has thousands of probable configurations. And each of the configurations that it can fall in to determine probability and statistics have been studied and learned by our ancestors and have been proven that under these circumstances, when I get this presentation, I can almost be assured that this is the situation. Our science of divination is not a plaything. It is deep. It is deep. Anybody who don't go to the people who play and says, oh, I'm going to give you a reading, give me $100. And that's as though you were born on Friday, or your moon was here and your star. That's foolishness. Go to someone who's truly into the craft. Go to the Akamfo, go to the Babalawo and say, please, I want to talk to my ancestors. Please, I want you to help me find my pathway through me back to me. And then you see that they're those who know how to find your energy and show it to you. Readings, Elvis, should we scrap AU completely? I feel like it's bugged. We should burn the building to the ground, but not scrap the organization and its concept. The Chinese have bugged the building. The Americans have bugged the building. Never let your enemy build your sacred space. I would burn the building to the ground and set up tents for my meeting. That would be a great sign of integrity. But the concept of the African Union is born out of the Organization of African Unity, which is born out of the desire for African leaders like Nkrumah and Ezekwe and others to have Pan-Africanism as a functional reality. So no, we don't want to give up the concept. Curacao. I have family from Curacao, my wife's family. So it's good to see you. Good to see you here. My mama Mabel, who is 97 years on the planet today, my wife's mother, who's from Trinidad. So we are all mixed up in a good way. We've all come back together. We're all into Pan-Africanism, and we don't even know it. One of my sons is married to an African queen from Jamaica. The other is married to an African queen from Dominican Republic. So we're already into the Pan-African mode. We just don't know it. How do we explain there are 90% of their own population, folks that still can right their wrongs? We are 15% of the U.S., took on the biggest military in the world, and we made a way for the diaspora. No, that's a good question, but it has a little bit of an arrogant twist. Um, it is because when you squeeze anything hard enough, it'll explode. Squeeze a piece of wood. I remember once I was in a demonstration, and the police had the wooden barriers, and we were pushing on one side, and the police were pushing on the other, and I'd never seen this happen. The wood exploded into splinters. So we in North America, because of the way we were pushed, we were forced to explode. In a way, on the continent, they were not pushed and squeezed that way. They had room to think they were free, but the parameters of their freedom were guarded by the enemy. So it isn't that we did better than them. It is that we, given our circumstances, took some responsibility for our freedom. And in doing so, it gives us the modeling that others can use. To Professor Small, I wonder if Africans in the diaspora would consider going back to fight, defend, free Africa if invaded, like we saw Muslims when defending the Middle East when it was invaded. We've been doing that ever since there was an Africa. That's why you need to study history. Africans went and fought in Ethiopia against the Italians. African pilots went to Ethiopia to fly planes. The Americans had to stop and would not allow us to leave the country to go and fight in Ethiopia. Africa went to Ghana with Nkrumah. Many of their families are still there. Africa went to Nigeria with Ezekwe. There are Africans from the Caribbean and other parts of the Caribbean who went with Kenyatta after he got free and out of the British death camps to start the freedom process in Kenya. And we've been going by the tens of thousands since. There's at least 60,000 Africans from the diaspora living, and if not more, in just Ghana. We're living in Tanzania. We're living in Uganda. We're living in Senegal. We're living in Gambia. So we've been going. We simply have to intensify the integrity of Pan-Africanism. So we understand we can't just go just to say we're going to live here free and get away from the tyranny of America, or we're going to live here and make some money because we have certain business skills and technical know-how. No, we have to go prepared for freedom or death. You have to go prepared to die to maintain the integrity of African freedom in the countries we find ourselves. I think we need more of it, and I think more of it will come. Dr. Susan Tatah, your speech in the One African Unity Conference moved my soul. I was literally just watching it, just wanting to say. I missed Susan's speech that day. I was coming from the airport. But when I got to the conference in Detroit, people were crying. People were literally crying on that One African speech that Sister Tatah gave in Detroit.
You. I'm back on stage. Um, Thank you so much, Professor James Small, for taking this time out to actually break down some very vital and critical knowledge about our existence. I mean, it's been a while, and so listening to you is already the voice of the ancestors in every format, be there on the ones on the continent or the ones in the diaspora. I mean, this question of the unity between Africans and on the continent and the diaspora, I think we really have to pay a lot of attention to issues like that, apart from political agendas. Our unity is very essential, like you say, and the unity we think most of these days, because I think we have about 600 leaders on the continent, African leaders on the continent, and I mean in the world. But we have, if we are 1.4 billion, imagine the majority. So we, the non-leaders in our own format, are the majority. Imagine if we ourselves, starting by ourselves, we just unite and do the same things or communicate our unity. Like a professor said, we're already united in so many ways. But the only thing is
Yeah, let me
nobody's saying it. We're
right.
changing the narrative.
Yes. It's
Yes,
Pan-Africanism or perish.
we're speaking it
Pan-Africanism or
because
perish.
we've been yes,
Now, Susan, there was a
So
question.
I understand, brother, the brother that was talking about how.
Now, I wanted to go back to a
Yes,
question where he talked about the 90 something percent in Africa and then 13% in America. But
yes, I'm still bringing another one of it.
yeah, but I want that brother to study history. Africa never ever stopped fighting against the forces of imperialism. In North America, yes, we had to go up against the
Okay,
white Americans and his system of tyranny. But on the continent of Africa, they had to go up against the white American army and every army in Europe every day on the military battlefield. There was never a day since the Berlin Conference that we were not fighting in Africa for freedom. And we saw it culminate in the 60s with MPLA in Angola and SWAPO in Namibia and uh, Zimbabwe with Mugabe and the movement, PIGC in Guinea-Bissau, and Mozambique. We saw all of these revolutionary armed struggle with the Pan African Congress and the NAC in South Africa and other parts of Africa. We saw these revolutionary fronts, these wars that went on for decades. But we don't see them because white folks don't write about them. You got to read books by black people to see and learn about these things. We wrote about them. Many black people in the 60s were involved in it. We never stopped fighting. The reason there's the freedom, the modicum of freedom there is on the continent of Africa today, because the people have been fighting. And remember, you can fit the United States in Africa 4 times. Okay? You can fit the United States in Africa, all of Western Europe in Africa, Russia in Africa, China in Africa, throw in Japan, and we still got space. That's how big Africa is. And yet we've been fighting every day since the first invader came. We have never stopped fighting. Sometimes the battle after neocolonialism set in and we thought we were free subsided. But when we found that many of those neocolonial structures simply created, how do you say, accommodationist collaborators for the enemy. And now we're seeing the freedom fight surge up again, you see, in Chad, in Guinea-Bissau, and in Mali, and other places. And we're seeing economic battles in Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi. So we've got to study what's going on the continent. We've always fought, and we've had some major victories. And if you want to look at some of the war victories, look at the great victories in the Zulu Wars. But we only got defeated because of gun technology. You know, we didn't have the technology, and they had it. But we won many of those battles. We brought down the Robespierre government in Britain after the Battle of Islamabad, you know, on the Setuea, defeating 2,000 British troops, leaving 2,000 dead. You know? They had to bring Kitchener from China to take on the Sudan after Muhammad Ahmed took the head of the General Gordon and sent it back to Cairo on a platter. We fought to crush the Italians. No, don't ever think that we did not fight and aren't still fighting. And just as our ways have changed, we don't use guns and armed rebellions like Turner and others, and we use the voting and other things in North America. They're doing that same thing in Africa too, trying to find a way to freedom. But we're talking about increasing it by knowledge of self. We've got to study our history. We've got to have a knowledge of what has occurred to us. Hi, Baba, it's your daughter, Rachel from Philadelphia. I love you so much, Sister Rachel. I love you too. I love you too. Just stay strong and keep struggling. We've got to understand that fighting on all fronts is necessary: the economic front, the educational front, the political front, the social front, the spiritual front, and when necessary, the military front. But we can't do this except that the arc that unite us of Pan-Africanism should be the core of our aspirations. Unity, 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 Pan-Africanism will perish. Unity, 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 Pan-Africanism will perish. That's how we'll get the one Africa that Susan was talking about in that speech. Can Yoruba nation lead the world in financial service, innovation, engineering in the future? The answer is absolutely yes, thanks to our team. Everybody thinks that their organization or their team is the one. Only in unity together will we do these things. Only when the Yoruba and the Akan and the Kikuyu and the Zulu bring the best of our minds to the table, the best of our economic minds, with the best of our economic tools, will we solve the problem of economic, the best of our political minds, will we solve the problem of polity, the best of our culture mind, will we solve the problem of culture. No one group, no one nation, no one organization, no one person will do this. Because the restoration of the African way of life is not something we have to invent. It is something we have to rediscover and then innovate on. If you don't rediscover it, you won't have your innovation. And the innovation will lead to the imitation and the improvisation on the things that our ancestors created so long ago.
We have another question there, Professor. How can economic development become a reality? And where do we begin?
Learning history. History is where you begin. It sounds so mundane. People think, oh, what does history got to do with anything? Well, look at what you're doing without it and think of what you could do with it. Learn the history so you can learn the essence of unity. The history tells you why you should unite and with whom you should unite and how you should unite. History truly will erase the mystery and let you work your miracle. We got the money, we got the finance, we got the knowledge, but what we've got to do is bring it together in an organized fashion. Professor Small, Absolutely. What will happen if we stop praying to Jesus and Allah? Ain't nothing happening to good for us now, never praise to them. I can't. The one thing that I think will happen, we won't be operating out of an illusion that something should happen that don't happen. We've been praying for a long time in these Western and East Western traditions, and it has not served us. It has made us subservient to the enemy who have abused us. Let's return to the way of our ancestors that said, if a thief stick their hands in your door, cut it off. No discussion. That is the hands of a thief, leave it on the floor. Not have a debate on whether it's just or non-just hand. Cut it off. We need to have a religion of our own.
Okay.
And we don't have to invent it. Our ancestors did that long ago. We have to return to it without having any fear. If we're not doing any, Malcolm said, if your religion that you got, Malcolm X, my father, he said, if the religion that you got is doing no better than what I can see you doing right now, you need to get rid of it anyway. But we get in the habit of the praying and the habit of listening to the sound. You know. Why? How do you justify all of those preachers who are 100 millionaires and the folks are still in the shape? You don't justify that. You just answered your own question. You know that they're criminals. Of course, why have not they got their country together? You make my head spin. Don't just put this on Africa. We haven't done any better in America. We got some of the richest preachers in America. Oprah Winfrey wasn't the first millionaire or billionaire and isn't the only one. We had them long before Oprah. It's just that white folks pushed little sister up for their purposes. The preachers in Africa is the same preachers in America, telling the same lies for the same reason. They're the same colonialists. They're the same imperialists, stealing from the people, stealing the dreams of the people, stealing the minds of the people, stealing the aspirations of the people, stealing the spirit of the people, and giving nothing back in return. To me, they're just colonial and imperial collaborators and ought to be treated the way any colonial or imperial collaborator should be treated by any society. If you study the Chinese fight for freedom and go to the Chinese war called the Boxer Rebellion, you will see how they treated their collaborators. Take lessons from others who've been victorious. Look at the Chinese people, they've been victorious. China was worse than Africa is. Colonialism had broken and damaged China worse than Africa. But they came back. You know how they came back? They became Chinese again. They studied their history. They learned their language.
Mm-hmm.
They practiced their culture. And they freed themselves from British colonialism, French colonialism, Portuguese colonialism, American colonialism. And it didn't take them that long to do so. By the time Mao Zedong came with the Red Army, they were halfway through their fight for freedom. And it has to do with history and culture. Restore the integrity of your history and culture. If you do that, you restore your memory of what happened to you and what needs to happen to those who did that to you. Africans in the Caribbean, we also need to sit down and have dialogue, stop viewing ourselves through our oppressors' eyes, forget flags. We are Africans in the Caribbean. Don't confuse geopolitics with ethnicity. I agree with you, Damien, 100%. And some of that is happening even through the CARICOM system, even though it's a political construct. People go into it with the aspiration of a Caribbean Pan-Africanism and a unity. And even outside of the CARICOM construct, there's many other civil society organizations throughout the Caribbean that's talking about the kind of unity that you're talking about. The enemy is down there fighting us every day. He didn't go away in the Caribbean. Neocolonialism is still alive. Jamaica is still answering to the king or whatever, the queen or whatever that thing is in England. And not to put it all on Jamaica, but other nations haven't freed themselves yet. Grenada is not truly free yet. Trinidad is not truly free yet. They're still tied to the imperialist colonialists. And so we have to find ways to break those chains of imperialism. And the only way I can see to break it is through knowledge of self, knowledge of your history, an understanding of the politics of your region, an understanding of the cultural deprivation of Africans. Just look at all our different, look at the different, what do you call it? When you play the pan, the different celebrations throughout the Caribbean that we celebrate. And my mind is so tired. I've actually been talking since 6 o'clock this morning. I really,
I'm so sorry. We're about to close.
But you see all the big celebrations in the parades in Brazil and Trinidad and the Junkanoo. We have reduced it from African culture to our women walking around naked, shaking their tootsies for white men who are tourists. Put our clothes back on. Bring African culture back to the celebrations, to the Mardi Gras, to what do you call the big celebration in Trinidad?
Carnival?
Carnival, yes. The carnival is almost every country in the Caribbean have a carnival. Bring the African culture back. Bring African spirituality back to carnival. The Europeans have got us just thinking carnival is about drinking liquor, drinking beer, taking off your clothes, disgracing yourself. Who are you trying to sell? You're on the auction block voluntarily now, trying to sell your bodies to the colonialists? I need to get David to saying, go down, go down, so we can learn something. Study history and erase the white man's mystery and work your black magic again.
Wonderful. I think that was a nice one, but you have another one, hectic one. I don't know if we should treat this as a topic because it's very huge.
Mhm.
I think you had talked about this, the role the Vatican has played in the deindustrialization of Africa. But I
Oh,
think, I don't know if we want to treat this topic now because that's a huge and a big, big, big
yeah, we could do a whole
topic on its own.
show on Vatican City. The Vatican is a nation
Yes.
state. It is the largest nation in the world. It is one of the wealthiest nations in the world. People go, how do you mean that little city in Rome is a nation? Is the largest nation because every Catholic property in the world and every Catholic church in the world, every territory owned by the Catholic is a part of the contiguous geographic Vatican City state. It is the largest geographical state in the world. It is one of the wealthiest because it has stolen the gold of most of the African, Asian, Mesoamerican world, and they have lined the coffers of the Vatican safe with it. It has stolen the literature of most of the world, thanks to the Spanish and Portuguese raiders they sent out into the world. And much of that literature of our history and culture, both in Central America, South America, and in the continent of Africa, and from India, is stored in the Vatican. And so much of our wealthy artifacts is in the museum, worth trillions of dollars. But that's and the genocide that each of the Pope oversaw from their very inception needs to be discussed. The crimes of humanity committed by the Catholic Church is second to none. The only thing that comes close to it is the crimes that Islam committed against the African people, particularly of East Africa, but some North and Central West Africa as well. This is a lot of black on black crime in the U.S. How do we get control of our communities and usher in peace and unity? The first thing, stop calling it black on black crime because that's not what you're looking at. What you're looking at is the minds produced by slavery, colonialism, and imperialism. If you take away black folks ain't in charge of nothing, they're not even in charge of the minds that's committing the crimes. So who's controlling the poverty that's producing that mind? You know, who's controlling that poverty that is producing that mind? So if you want to stop what you're calling black on black crime, first stop calling it black on black, because you're looking at the victims of post-slavery trauma syndrome. Understand what that is. And then the way you begin to stop it is exactly what I've been talking about. Learn your history. The first thing you do if you learn your history, you'll never call what you're seeing black on black crime. There's an assumption like we're in charge of our environment. We're not in charge of nothing in the US. We have in New York City a black mayor, a black secretary of state,
Okay.
black attorney
I
general,
think,
black district attorney. You know, we have a black head
can
of
you
the
wait?
Senate, black head of the assembly, and nothing has changed because we don't control the system.
Can you hold on, please? Professor James, you have a caller on the line and he has a question. Can you go ahead and ask your question, please?
Mama, my question is, I want to know what's the role the Vatican play in deindustrializing Africa, because a lot of the things that were built in Africa, like the pyramid, excavators and machinery. So can you speak of the role that the Vatican played in deindustrializing Africa? That's my question. Thank you.
No, that's too big a question for what we have left on the show. We need to do a show on that, and you know a lot of the answer to that. But for other people, the Catholic Church, I just said it. Vatican City is a nation state. It has its own currency. It has its own banking system. It is in full partnership with imperialism in every aspect. In every aspect, has its own banking system and its own currency. And if it's in partnership with Wall Street and Downing Street and La Cité in London, then you know what you're talking about. And that the Vatican City is a partner in imperialism of the world. What they've done It made sure that every country that imperialism has invaded, they've come along to take over the socialization of the minds of the people, to break them away from their own culture and reduce them to European clones through their schools and their church. The Mormons are doing the same thing. Everywhere the white man has put a church in Africa, he put a school onto the church. You ever figured out why? The Vatican is just better at that than anybody else. I agree.
And a hospital too.
The Pan-African tradition stolen by Europeans, and I agree with that. And that's why I'm saying we need to take it back and make it a Pan-African condition, and not a European disgraceful expose of our women.
It's true. Three things that we'll discuss even in the next session, like you're saying. You said something. Have we ever figured out why the education system or the Eurocentric education system came
indoctrination system, the European indoctrination system.
Indoctrination systems came with hospital, but also I think there are three things: the church, the hospital, and the schools.
Yes, the church was bringing all three of them. That gave them control of the concept socialization. Socialization is how a group of people get their values, their interests, and their principles. So when you control the healthcare of the people, you control the training of the people, which they call education. You control the religion or the spiritual aspects of the people. You're controlling the socialization process of the people. The product that is going to come out at the other end is going to be a product that system produced. And that system, in order to give credibility to itself, must destroy the system that was there in place in the indigenous community when they got there.
That is it. That's a whole big thing to chop, because I think those are the fundamentals, the basic things that we work on. Well, I just brought out this from Jesse, and because Jesse is bringing a point that I also noticed out there when I was in
Jesse,
America.
Let me stop Jesse right here. So Mapuka is what is not known about twerking. What it is, everything comes, all content, Jesse's got intent. The twerking we see in these carnivals is not what we see in the African dance movements. So let's not even make the equation. See, what we are doing is playing the European sex game. Call it what it is. You know, we're marketing our behinds and don't even know what we're doing, because we don't even intend to say yes to the suitor when they come patting us on our butts. And then too many of us say yes. Let's be real. To take an African dance,
Absolutely.
to take a piece out of an African dance formulation and then say that it's African, no. It stopped being African when its intent and purpose stopped being African. And that's what makes
Absolutely.
All content have intent.
The intention. True. I agree. That's why I brought it up. The context is different, and the way we promote or the way we do it now, the intents are absolutely different. It's still a part of a mindset, the traumas that we're going through. And so not every, it's the same thing, Professor Small, like on the continent, they keep talking about beating children and stuff like that, and refer it, when you speak, for instance, and you say, no, this is not the right way for us to raise our kids. And then they'll tell you, no, it's our African tradition. You people in the diaspora have copied the white man system. And I said, no, this battery came from slavery. We never were beating children in pre-colonial history. I never saw even a single case until the colonialists came and taking slavery. And you could see it also in our plantations in America, how they had to beat you until you lose your name. So that beating is not an African tradition. So there are a lot of things that we can say was stolen from Africa. We, first of all, are on the research of certain African cultures and traditions that we are claiming. Definitely were also inherited. We know chiefs and funds, even in the royal setup, that people are confused now and like, oh, these funds, they are political funds. They're all the royals. They are now becoming politicians. They earn salaries and stuff like that. And we are on the research to find out if even the bloodlinings were from these royals, because most of these funds were colonial funds. When they came to invade us, they had to distort the royalty and the lineage, and they
Yeah.
installed their own funds that would help to get more slaves for them.
Yeah,
So
and
a lot
many
of things are missing.
they did that in many instances, but remember, not in all places. They didn't destroy all of our systems. So we have to study and see what systems remained intact or pretty much intact. They destroyed a lot of our systems and reconstructed them and put in people that they call chiefs. Africa had no word called chief, but since Nana
Mm-hmm.
was telling me this in Ghana the other day, they wanted to be called kings, so they reduced us to being called chiefs. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we had no concept of a chief. An African king or an African queen mother is the representative of the ancestors to that community. That's what
Mm.
those titles are. You're not holding a throne based on wealth and land ownership because you own no land. The king or queen in Africa own no wealth. Okay? The people take care of your needs. But your responsibility is to be the connection between them and the spiritual cosmology we call ancestry. When you sit on that stool or sit on that skin, you're no longer you. You're no longer Susan Tatah. You become the
Yes,
ancestors for that whole people. Now, when you step from
absolutely.
your stool and you step from your skin and you go out into the community, you're still respected as Nana, but you're Susan. And they know you're not the ancestor at this moment. If I want to have the ancestors communicate, I come to the palace of the shrine where you are, and you will sit,
Mm-hmm.
and your entourage will sit with you, your linguist, your priest, and so forth. And then I will address you, or I will address the ancestors as you, and you will respond from the ancestors to me through your linguist. Africa isn't talking about a chunk for us, MF. I want a piece of my motherland. Africa isn't talking about a chunk for us. I didn't quite understand that question. Um, I've been going home for 40 years. I have a business in Africa. Me and my comrades, we have a 30-room hotel in Cape Coast. Um, a beautiful hotel. We need
Mm-hmm.
funds to fix it up better and make it a nice boutique. Hopefully by next summer we will be at that boutique level. It's called Sana Lodge. I had no problem using good business practice and good diligency and having the right legal um, uh, advisory. You have no problem doing business there, no, just like you do business anywhere. Um, I have land, and me and some of my children was talking yesterday because I'm bringing them together. And I want to build a family home in Ghana, in the Western region, for my family before I die and leave this earth. Um, I have land in Agogo. I sit a stool in Agogo, in the mountains, going towards Kumasi. Um, so I going back home, getting land is not an issue. It's not a problem. Trust me. Some people get in difficulty because you don't use good business practice. You have to use good business practice in Africa, just like you do over here. You can't go and say, "Oh, you're going to sell me 10 acres of land, shake your hand, and give somebody $30,000. I don't even know who owns the land." You do the same due diligence. You get a legal advisor, a lawyer. You do the same due diligence to check the land office to see who owns the deed, and you do the double check to make sure the deeds are correct and so forth. And you go to court and you go and have the documents and corporations and stuff done so you can buy your land in a sensible way, like you would do anywhere else in the world, and you won't have any trouble. I've never had an issue, except my lawyer's expensive. And I asked my friend Justice, I said, "Why you charge me so much money?" He said, "It's small." Have you ever had a corporate issue in Ghana? No. Hey, so now you know I trust you. And so I love my brother, Justice. It's a law firm called Justice Mink and Primo. A beautiful family, the most beautiful people, who's helped me when I didn't even have money, helped me when I couldn't even pay the bill. They said, when you're able to pay these bills, we got a business arrangement, then we will work the things the way we had. Oh, someone said they had lunch at the hotel at Sun on Lodge in 2007. Beautiful place. And the food was delicious. Yeah, we're a little down now, but that was one of the best restaurants in Cape Coast. And I wanted to again be the best restaurant in Cape Coast. Well, thank you, brother. That's it. I have F1.
Yes, that's
Africa
Ayoka
is so
F1.
beautiful. But close your eyes in Africa. Forget about the aesthetics. The aesthetics of Africa that you visualize is extraordinarily beautiful. But just close your eyes and feel the people, hear the language, smell the people, breathe. The beauty is just so absorbing. I don't know what to say. You know you're home. It doesn't mean that Muhammad ain't gonna charge you too much money for the little statue he's trying to sell. That costs $100. He said, "Oh, small is 300." He's a businessman. You got to say, "Muhammad, I'm not paying you 300. I'm gonna pay you 100." And then maybe your Muhammad will arrive at 150, and you get the statue that you love, and Muhammad go and feed his family. You know, let's find our way back home. Do not go to Africa and expect New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, even though you're going to find a little bit of that all over Africa too. We have major cities and metropolis and metropolitan areas. But what you're going to find in Africa is the people clinging to traditional values in one hand, holding on to colonial values in the other hand, trying to figure out what to do. Our job is to teach them how to drop the colonial values and hold the indigenous values with both hands. And we would have done our job.
Thank you very much. I think we're rounding up because, Professor, I know your program, you've been on the road, but I have one last information that is very important, and this is the pilgrimage to Cameroon in January. And I talked to you about the idea. A lot of our people actually have never been on the continent, and now that they know that Pan-African Daily is on the continent, and they just feel secured and comfortable and want to at least visit the continent before anything would happen. And I thought of us, just like the pilgrimage that you did to Ghana. If it will be possible for you to help us put a package and come to Cameroon, the date that I set, that I saw that would be maybe convenient, particularly because of the people in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, that were really saying end of January, beginning February, or the 10 days, and the end of January could be very, very important for them. They have never been on the continent. I know thousands of people that have never, but they never trusted themselves to go on the continent. And now that I'm on the continent, they feel it is necessary for them at least to have somebody they know they can go. And I think Cameroon, because Cameroon is small Africa, we want to put a package of all the indigenous cultures that are here. We also want to put the other countries that are here together. And I only thought about Yaoundé, like the location, because first it has easy access from the airport and I could manage that. What do you think about it, Professor?
No, it's doable. And you and I need to talk next week and really tie down some of the facts. And let me give it to my sister, Sharifa, who runs the travel agent in partnership with me. Because I have my own tour company, Cultural Heritage African Tours, which is about 35 years old now. And let us look at the information you've got and let us make contact with our network on the ground in Cameroon, and let's formulate it. Let's do it. It's doable. We can call it a Black History Month, the World Black History Month tour, and let's do it. So let's think. Monday, I'm going to be busy, but Tuesday, I'll be free in the late afternoon, early evening your time. And let's put together the tour to Cameroon.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, yes, to Africa and starting in Cameroon. In once foot in Cameroon, one thing I can guarantee you, you eat food from all African countries you've never seen. Watch dances from all African. It's really going to be what Maponga Joshua is saying. He wants to be a part of this trip. We have to do the drumming, the 12-12 drummings that we've been talking about. It's really connecting our roots to our ancestors. And don't forget, Cameroon, Limbe was also the door of exit, the door of no return, or the door which we should return. Bimbia, Limbe, and we have an African American sister that did a very good job and a research on the different African in the diaspora that were taken from Limbe, Cameroon, right down to Tanzania and even to Ghana before they shipped them. So Cameroon plays a very unique role. And I just throw the question back to all of you watching us here. If you'll be interested in that in that tour, we would bring you more information on that. So get ready. I'm here. I did love to attend Cameroon Festival too. Yes, of course. That's what we're going to put on. We're going to put on the kind of culture you expect to see in all other African cultures or countries. That's why they call Cameroon the small Africa, Africa in miniature. Okay, food, dance, traditional dance, fabrics, and history about the African market women the Cameroonian market women who started that revolution before it went down to the Nigerian women and to the women in the South. I mean, that is the history that we need to put out on, I don't know, a 1 week or 10 days tour just around here. Professor,
Hello.
very interested in this tour? Yes.
Oh, yes. Very interesting. Okay, Flavin.
A lot. So, yes. So throw out your your question, sorry, and your interest in the chat box, or contact us on panafricandailytv at gmail.com. I'll share the email with you here. And please, Jesse, I'm very sorry, Jesse Johnson, we were not actually talking about the Mapoka dance as a way. We understood that you were trying to talk about the origin, so don't feel offended. We understood your point, but we just wanted to share that quick information that the twerking and Mapoka has
Let
two
them understand
importance
that
behind
it's
it.
the
That was
question of intent. It's not body movement. It's the question of the intent of the carnival. We have shifted the intent
yes.
and the appeal that's being made. We're not shaking our hips in a spiritual gesture that's telling a story with other movements that's tied and connected to that hip shaking. We have isolated that little piece and we are using it in a white European sexual gesture way. That is not the intent of the African body movement in their dance form. So that's the point I was making, and I can't back away from that because that's the reality. Whether we're laughing at it, joking at it, we have to be very clear with the difference between profane and sacred. You can do a thing in a manner that is profane, or you can do it in a manner that it is sacred, and yet you're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, that's good. So thank you, Prof. I'll just throw out the information out there. Those that are interested should mail us, and then we will have to check out what is it that you want to see, what are the aspects of the festival or the visit that you want to, the elements that you want to, have on the program, and then we put your timing and then the package together. So thank you very much. Prof, one last word, or we're closing? Just give us a closing remark.
The closing remarks is very simple: Pan-Africanism or perish, freedom or death. True freedom is to be shackled to your identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your identity, right? Freedom or death, Pan-Africanism or perish. One Africa.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sister Susan. It's always an
Good
honor.
night to you and good night to all of us. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Peace and blessings.
Also, an honor to have you too. Good night, Prof. Peace, peace. Thank you. And I also want to thank you. I know it's very, very late. We're running late. I wanted to share a TikTok link with you, but I think all of you that have been following us on the Pan African Daily, or actually in our chat and WhatsApp groups, we shared the link. Like I said, for those of you that are joining us lately, there's some content that we actually could not be able, or we will not be sharing it here on other social media platforms that are actually biased against our truth and trying to put their foot in our mouth. And so we recently created a Pan African Daily TV TikTok page, and we just launched it today. There are already a lot of people, and we want to get 100,000 following this page so that we can start going live on this page. Why is it very necessary? We've understood that, other platforms, I don't want to call any names here, have been actually biased by the Pan African Daily TV content. We are stripped off from anything that has to do with monetization or even subscribers. Ever since we hit our 100,000 on this platform, we have nothing, no silver certificate. They are taking down all the relevant content that we're teaching and sharing information here. So most of the platforms that we're circulating on are absolutely not friendly anymore to Pan African Daily. But we will continue to engage with our followers and our subscribers here on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram on other pages. But we want to give you the hottest hat information, realistic talks on TikTok. Now, TikTok gave us the possibility, or content creators, the possibility to do a 10 minutes videos or content. And something like this, we do know in the beginning we could not actually engage because we were focused on Facebook and YouTube, and our objectives with these platforms are already attended. We've achieved our objectives with these platforms. But the more they begin to shut us down, to limit because of community standards, I don't know what that's all about, regardless of the kind of information that we're bringing here. We don't just bring animators, we bring scholars, we bring researchers, we bring authors, we bring professionals. They don't come here and just speak. Everything Professor James Moore talks about, to Professor PLO, to Dr. Akana, to all of them, it's research and proven. And that is why Pan-African Daily TV is trusted by the information that we give out there. Even on our Facebook page, we have more than close to 1 million following now. All the information that we put there are fact-checked information. There's nothing that we just pick things on the internet or just talk about anything anyhow. So the topics that we deal here and the speakers that we bring here are world-class African scholars and academians, opinionists, youth voices, voices of the voiceless. And so it is not just creating content, but I do know, because we have a huge following, and now this other content social media platforms just want to push us into a situation of animation, entertaining, and doing all these things that we're saying so that they can climb us up to 1 million. It's always a distraction agenda. Anything that we focus to build the Africa that we want, to speak the truth to ourselves. It might sound arrogant in some point, but this is teaching. This is history. How could you talk about history without mentioning the facts and the details and the timings and the linings? And this history that our professors and professionals are bringing here, I bet you if it would be spoken or taught by a Caucasian, there would be nothing wrong with it. But just because Africans are owning their narrative, creating a new narrative for the Africa we want, because Africans are speaking for Africa, it becomes a problem. We understand that, but we know it all because we are the kings and the royals, and we did that 1,000 years ago to chase out all the enemies of Africa, and we are doing it, and we've been doing it since 500 years ago. We never gave up. We're never going to give up, not even till the end of the time until we relocate back to our ancestors. So please make sure you're just joining us and following us on TikTok, because that's where the real once in a while, once upon a time series is going to come up. We don't just only want to talk about the Africa now, we want to create short, strong, powerful series about the pre-colonial Africa and this Africa, so that we can give a difference of the past, the present, and we could have a clear picture of the Africa we want. All this melange and all these things that we keep talking about here, political stuffs, how did they come about? All the issue of wealth creation that our brother Marshall talked about is ignorance about our history completely. Just like how Prof is saying, you have to go back to your history. But the one single thing I keep reiterating is what kind of history and who is telling you that history. Because when we go to our story, that's what I prefer the words of Professor Bayana Bello, when he said we have to go to our story, not his story, our story. Our story means our story. Okay, that's what we should be paying attention to. And we're bringing it to you in a short kind of a movie set up, audiovisual, powerful facts and figures, the Africa before colonialization, and you would understand how someone named Mansa Musa is referred to the richest ever human that existed in the planet. I mean, we're still not talking about the development of Africa or that the world is ending. And so when we know about the Elon Musk and the Bill Gates and the Rockefellers on all these rich people, and we begin to see money as if it's a new thing, and we forget that they once lived Mansa Musa of the Mali Empire, of the Songhai Empire, and these were the greatest ever people that existed, and these are us. So because we don't know this pre-colonial history, it is difficult when we don't know our pre-colonial story. That's why we believe the history. Okay, and the history is then in the period when the colonizers came to us, but that's not the beginning of Africa. And that's why I still went again and I ask you to refer Al Kebulan, because even calling us Africans is still history. It's still history, it's not our story, because our story is actually Al Kebulan. So we're going to take you 1,000 years back, and we're going to be doing that on TikTok because we don't want any interference or anybody messing up with our content that we're going to be pouring out there. And of course, we want to enjoy some of the benefits. How do we pay our bills or do all this creation? Yes, we've been doing all our thing. I'm a philanthropist, I'm a charity person, you as well. But the economical factor is very important to our existence, and we do know it. So if Brother Mansa Musa discovered that riches and wealth is not the creation of the European, we have to get our facts together. And so I really thank you all for being patient. We're almost into 2 hours 30 minutes, and that's how far we always have been on the Pan-African Daily TV. I want to thank all of you for signing in. I am trying to lay hands on King Maponga. Definitely he's back from Uganda. It's been a while we've not heard from him. But one person that is busy and wanted to actually also address us was Dr. Arikana, but she's also busy, but promises to be with us. Professor Peel we used to have here Ron Spears, Reverend Shock Matthews, and all that. All of them are already warming up to be back on the Pan-African Daily as we move to the next level of pre-colonial history. If we don't know, we don't go back to Sankofa. If we don't Sankofa, we would not be able to move into the future. Of course, we are existing. Short-minded Africans would always like, no, forget about the past. We are the ones that are always stuck in the past, and that's why Africa is not moving ahead. And I keep saying, thank God we're stuck in the past. To be honest with you, if I look at the present of what we're into now, I better be stuck in my past. I better be stuck in the pre-colonial African history, and that's what makes us strong. So don't be afraid with such quotations like, oh no, just move ahead. You people keep talking about slavery. It happened 400 years ago and 500. No, 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 it's still happening now. It's happening now. Better be stuck in it and face the reality. For us to keep lying and lying to ourselves, we are past that. So yes, our youth need to learn. Our youths are taken from us, but they cannot get the history, the our story when we keep talking about the history. And when we refer them and talk about history, they're going to be reading the books that we never wrote or contribute to it. Why? Just because of one distortion, the indoctrination of the Africans. Some person argued with me a couple of times and said the Europeans meant well when they thought that they came and saw our fealty state of Africa, and they thought they could build us hospital and give us a civilized education and teach us how to dress up and not be climbing trees and sleeping in the woods and stuff like that. You know what? We're gonna handle that conversation on TikTok. Okay. So if I get a King Maponga on the show live tomorrow, I'll definitely let you know. In any case, we're gonna have a speaker, or we just revisit our political correspondence from Ghana, brother Farouk. I think he's back. He reached out to me today, and just keep the conversations going into our story and not history. Thank you so very much. Good night to all of you. I would have loved to share like I said, our TikTok. Let me just put TikTok and go to TikTok.com and put Pan African Daily. Like I said, we launched already. I think we're already having close to 300 today. We should be having, and we promise ourselves, and we're giving ourselves this challenge. And I want you to take this challenge and share it with one another. What is the challenge? For us to prove to you the relevance of Pan-African conversations and Pan-African Daily TV and our speakers. For us to prove to you the importance of how Africans, our youth, are actually learning from the Pan-African Daily TV, like Professor James Small, to prove to you that the leadership and everything that is happening on the continent today, they must have been following Pan-African Daily, because we articulated all the stuff with clear intentions and brought up these narratives. And now we are seeing the proofs. But I just want to prove to you that we are going to get the 100K followers, 100,000K followers on TikTok in less than 2 months. We did it. That's how much Africans worldwide are hungry for knowledge. That's how much we are hungry for our unity. That's how much we are hungry for our Ubuntu-ness, for our Africanness. And so you are one of them. Share this and follow us on TikTok, and we would be putting out the real thing. That's the real battle for our love, our unity, our peace, and our economic independence by Africans, from Africans, for Africa. Thank you so very much. We're going to be seeing us tomorrow. And so I say good night. On behalf of Patricia Swain, on behalf of Naisha, on behalf of all our speakers, on behalf of Professor Baina Bello and Pan-African Daily TV executive team, women, youth, elders, and all of you, our chat members, our followers, our commentators, our critics, Okay? And even those that are putting their foot in our mouth is because you know how powerful truth can be. And that is freedom. So I want to thank you so very much. And I feel so, so honored when I'm watching you. The numbers on the screen, they're just not letting me to end the show, but I think we would have to do that once and for all. Good night. Bye-bye.
You are watching the Pan African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tatah. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers. You are watching the Pan African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tatah. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.